Welcome to the It's Your Choice podcast, where we learn how to rewire our brains to live the life we desire. On with the show. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Kristin Schmoke joining us. Thank you so much, Kristin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, you are a coach helping parents and parent child relationships to be as beneficial as they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to
And
simplify.
we all
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we all know. No, it's okay. We all know parenting is challenging for those of us who are parents. We know how it is. And I'm going to make a statement that it's probably going to anger some people, but I truly believe it, and I'm allowed to have my opinion. So and I am a parent. I mean, my daughter is now an adult, so I think a little bit of a caveat. I can say this. I always kind of had the thought, or not always, but for many, many years now, well over a decade, that as a parent and assuming that I'm in a relationship and I'm married and have the child, that I am the most important person in the household. I'm more important than my spouse, and I'm more important than my child. And that is usually people are like, it should be the most important. And I know people might take that clip it and that snippet, but we have to kind of look at the bigger picture. I think I'm number one because if I'm not good, if I'm not healthy, and if I'm not, in a right frame of mind and good, I can't be a good spouse. I can't be a good mom. I can't be a good friend. I can't be a good anything if I'm not good. And obviously, we're not good all the time, but I need to take care of me first. Second, then, is my spouse or partner. I need to work on our relationship second, because if we're not strong, good parents, how, like with each other, what are we going and displaying our kids if there's fighting and there's tension and then there's chaos? And I'm a full believer that home should be our sanctuary. The world can be crazy and stuff that goes out on side, because then if I'm number one, my spouse and partner and I are number two together. And then with our children, the family unit, we're number three. And I believe, with that being said, though, too, that the man in the house, he should feel he's number one. He needs to be number one to him, because he needs to be good, to be a good spouse, to be a good dad, to be good. And then, of course, the number two is relationship, and then three is the family unit. What do you think of that?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's 100%. And I think society pitches us this story that we're supposed to, especially as women when we were young, that we're supposed to give everything away to our child, that our child is the most important. And we actually lose our own power in that. And I think that's why there's so many mothers out there right now that are maybe acting like a martyr or bitter or overwhelmed or not fulfilled in parenthood. And that's because they've lost themselves in parenthood to their child. And also, a lot of reasons why marriages fall apart because the center focus has been the child. When neither adult is taking care of themselves, there's nothing left to give to anybody else. We can try, but it's not. When we pour into ourselves, actually, that love pours out into them, and we can only love another as much as we love ourselves. So when we are loving on ourselves, we are filling our cup first. That means we have way more patience. We're way more open-minded. We have probably a little more sleep under our belt too. And we just have more capacity for life's challenges.
Hmm. And we always have life is challenging, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what. I always say we can look at somebody and think, oh, they've got it all, they've got it so easy, they're famous, they're wealthy, they're a big CEO, whatever we perceive as being super successful. But they have all kinds of stresses and challenges and things that maybe we don't even consider, we couldn't even fathom. And a lot of them have a lot of the same things that we do of insecurity, maybe not doing the best job and all of those things. We, for some reason, just because somebody's really good at their job. And so, because I'm not starstruck, I mean, there are great actors and actresses. Great, you're really good at your job. And then, like CEOs and people who get paid millions, you're really, hopefully anyway, that they're really good at their job. I don't know if they really are, but assuming that they're really good at their job and that's why they're getting paid that money. But that doesn't mean they're a great parent. It doesn't mean they're happy and fulfilled or success, like feeling like they're successful. We may perceive it that way, but they may not feel that way.
I find when I talk to a lot of different people, there's kind of two categories, right? People will either give their all to their children and leave nothing for themselves, or they'll give their all to their job and leave nothing to themselves. But in both categories, they're not giving anything to themselves, which again is disempowering, and they're feeling burned out. So if you're giving all to your job, you're right, at the end of the day, you don't have anything else to give to your child or to your partner or even to yourself. If you're giving everything to your child all day, you don't have anything else to give to your job or your partner or friends or anything else. And so it feels like this very lonely journey, but it doesn't have to, because when you are so deeply in love with yourself and you tune into the needs that you have, I'm not talking about like a girls' weekend in Vegas or a massage or even just like a girls' night out or manicures and pedicures. Those things can be true. And yes, they're great, but those are external things. Those are materialistic items. When I'm talking about taking care of you, I'm talking about like deeply, like tuning into you. What are my needs right now? Have I had any water today? When's the last time I showered? When's the last time I took a moment and just looked outside and appreciated the birds flying by and the flowers growing and oh, maybe it's a little warmer today. Did I feel that sun on my face? Those are the kind of things that I'm talking about, and they're free and they're available to us at all times. But if we aren't taking care of ourselves in that natural way, we lose it. And then that's when the stress and the overwhelm and the exhaustion seep in and kind of take over.
So where did we go wrong?
Yeah.
Like, and I know there's not really like an answer to that because things change over time, right? And over years, society has changed. Women are now working all the time. We weren't before. And not saying that things were better then or people didn't have stress then, but what do you think, like maybe more so instead of where did we go wrong, because we'll never really kind of figure that out, but what can we be doing even in the smallest things that will produce those kind of ripple effects, because everything we do has ripple effects. And sometimes, it would be great to make sure every day I'm meditating for 45 minutes in the morning. And some people are just like, I need sleep. I can't get up 45 minutes earlier because it's just like I'm barely getting enough as it is right now. So, what would be some of those little things that we can do? Like you mentioned, some like getting some sun on our face when we can in the sun and just taking that few seconds of breathing and thinking, oh, it's a beautiful day. What other
Yeah.
things can we do that are kind of have those ripple effects for us?
For sure. First of all, I want to say that I think this was kind of watered out of us over generations, right? This has been
Mm,
decades upon decades and generations upon generations of where we've gotten to today. The second thing I want to say is, oftentimes we'll be like, oh, I have a really good morning routine. I get up, perhaps I read my book, maybe do a meditation, do a little journaling, drink my coffee, have a little me time. And then we get going about our day. And then we're like, well, why isn't my day aligning with what I set my intentions for when I had that morning, right? And what I'm going to
mm,
say is, In between the hours of our special times, our morning routine and our nightly routine, we kind of go unconscious. We go into these old habits of rushing through our day, subscribing to this hustle, 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 faster, 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 always distracted, keeping up with the Joneses mentality that society is feeding us. And we're kind of treating the rest of our day like an emergency. Everything is I have to respond this way. And when you do that, your body is like, "Ah, there's a tiger under threat." Like it's constantly under threat. So what I encourage parents to do is just pause. Like maybe you set 4 alarms on your phone today, or maybe you set one every hour, depending on what your life looks like. And when those alarms go off, stop and go, how am I feeling right now? Am I feeling like that woman who set that intention or did that journal prompt this morning? Am I actually aligned with the actions that I said I was going to do today? Am I yelling less at my kids like I promised myself that I would? Okay, maybe I'm not yelling less. Okay, well, I'm not going to sit here and judge it and be like, I'm a failure, the day's lost. No, 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 none of that. I get to realign with that intention and go, okay, what do I need right now to be a parent who doesn't yell? Oh, you know what? I need just a moment. Okay, kids, mommy's taking a time out. I'll be back in a few. And it's okay to allow those things to happen. It's okay to give yourself permission to take these breaks. It's okay to give yourself permission to take breaks during the workday. People think they need these really long, elaborate breaks. And I encourage them to say it really only takes 90 seconds. Put your hand on your heart, close your eyes, take a couple slow, deep breaths in, and ask yourself this question. What do I need right now to be aligned with my highest self? If the answer is nothing, then great, I'm already acting like my best self. If something else comes up, then I act on it and I do it. You know, teachers are famous
Right.
for not going to the bathroom all day. They're like, I can't, I can't, I can't. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. We're not a victim here. You get to take care of your biological needs. You get to go to the
Mm,
bathroom. Moms are the
right.
same way.
Yeah, it's true. And it is, as you said, so I was about a year ago or something like that. I was getting more into meditation, and one that I was watching had said the alarm, put on your alarm every hour. And then each one I did a little bit of a different message. So I was like, one was release negative energy. Then an hour later was gratitude. And an hour later might have been love. And an hour later, and so each one. And because it's easy to, as you said, go unconscious, go back to our way we've been for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Like we can't just change that overnight, usually, unless we have a life altering near death experience. Then some people do, but for most of us, we don't. And even that, sometimes when it goes off, I would look and be like, oh yeah, okay. And it's just a few seconds. And sometimes even I'll be in the middle of something, be like, oh, but it's still, even though I don't take that full um 30 seconds, minute, whatever it may be, it's still that, oh, I need to be in that moment. I need to think about that, whatever it may be, love, gratitude, whatever that note is on there, and just be like, okay, I need to remind myself of that. And I think it's a great reminder because it's so easy to forget. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know about the Mind Matters weekly newsletter that is full of actionable tips to help you rewire your brain to live the life that you desire. Sign up for it at sallypeterson.com. And when you do, you'll get the top 5 brain hacks for peak performance. Again, you can get it at sallypeterson.com. Now back to the show.
100%. We're realigning ourselves. It's that awareness and that intention. Being put together is really powerful because when we're not aware, we can't change anything we're not aware of. But when we're aware of it, it's like, oh, wait, I do have industry over this. I have my own choice. I get to choose differently than the way I'm behaving right now. And I don't have to make any excuses for it. I don't have to have any explanation for it. I get to just choose differently based on what do I need right now to do
Mhm.
differently and then go do it.
And it really is a choice. I think that's something that people really need to understand. Not saying that it's easy, but and it is, even if you're stuck in traffic and we're getting angry because so many people can relate to it, we're just trying to get home, we've had a long day, and now unfortunately like there's an accident or something and we get upset because we're not moving anywhere. And I always think when I get stuck in that I have to be, yes, I'm stuck in traffic, but at least I wasn't the one in the accident,
Hmm.
right? Like at least my car is fine. I'm fine. And even if I don't know how bad or even if it's not a bad accident, but I always think, well, if it does happen, at least it's not me. And then what I also encourage people to do is think, okay, well, you're in the car. Think of, what are you going to do that's good in the evening or for the weekend? Are you planning something with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends? And think about what you're going to be doing or planning and think about, oh, it's going to be because then it just changes the mood. Instead of that, oh, traffic all the time, I'm stuck like, oh yeah, it's great. Oh, I'm going to go watch that movie on the weekend with my friends, or oh, I'm going to hang out with the girls and just whatever it is that kind of brings us joy. We can think about that and just change that energy within our body itself. So I mean, we're stuck. You can't, if you're stuck in traffic, your flight is delayed, whatever it may be. I mean, those are things we cannot change, but we can choose how to respond and choose our emotions and our vibration in that situation.
So I saw something recently that said, in the delay, there is abundance. And I love that because there's always two things present at the same time, right? There's the challenge and there's the beauty. And we get to choose what we want to see. We can choose to see the car accident and the traffic that's slowing us down and how hard that is. And we're going to be late for this, that, and the other thing. And we really want to get home. Or we get to choose that moment and be like, you know what? I have a few moments to take a couple deep breaths and be by myself and listen to the music that I want to listen to. I get to look around. Maybe I'm seeing a sunset. Maybe it's raining out. I can be super thankful that it's raining out. Like super simple things. Maybe I'm thankful that I am safe in my car. And maybe we can even send a little note to the person mentally, like who was in the accident, saying that I hope you're okay and I surround you in love, even though I'm frustrated this traffic is going slow. Both can be true. And I just really like to point that out to parents. And it goes along with your child too. Like if you have a child that is constantly power struggling with you, keep in mind there's also
Mhm.
moments with them as well. We sometimes have a tendency to hyper focus on just the challenge, but the beauty is also always present, but you have to choose to see it.
Right. I used to have a saying with my daughter, um, for myself was pick your battles. I'd be like, pick your battles, Sally. She would be wearing something and maybe it's wintertime and I lived in Canada, so it gets cold. And she would put on a dress. And I would be, it's kind of cold for a dress. I want to wear it. And so part of me is pick your battles. And the other would be, okay, but if we're going, like make sure you bring these things. I would generally make sure that I had extra stuff kind of hidden because I know she's going to get cold. And then when she started to complain about getting cold, I would say, well, I told you. You chose. This was your choice. There's consequences to the choice. And I'd let her be cold for a little bit, just so then she would know. And then, of course, like I'm not letting her get really cold or freeze, but then to make sure she got warm because they have to learn, right? And it's the way that I saw it was part of life. If you want to wear a dress and it's cold outside and there's snow on the ground, you need to make sure that you have layers on or you wear something different because it's cold. Like that's the way it is. If you want to, with other kids as well, they want to climb a tree. And you're like, don't climb the tree. I don't, you might fall and get hurt. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. You could fall. You got to be careful. And if you fall and break an arm, well, some of them learn then not to climb the tree. A painful way they learn. Some of them are still going to climb the tree anyway because that's their personality, and they'll just do it again. But I think it's also kind of picking those battles of let them do so many things, let them be creative and do, even though we know that there's going to be some challenges as potential challenges as an outcome, but that's how they also learn and grow as well. And if we're always don't do that, don't do that, don't think that, don't think that, I think we kind of stifle that growth. And then they're always like, oh, you're always no, you're always this. My daughter said to me one time, um, it was, how did she say it? Because I'm always, if I say yes, it means yes. If I say no, it means no. Like I'm like if I say yes even later, I'm like, oh, I wished I didn't, but I said yes, so I stick to it. I am my word. When she would say, you say what did you say? I say maybe. She'd be like, you always say maybe. I said, I don't always say maybe. I said, when I say yes, it's yes. And when I say no, it's no. I say maybe because I don't know yet. I'm like, would you rather have me just say no right now? She's like, no. And I said, okay, well, maybe we have to look at other things that are going on and we'll see.
Yeah. So for those kids that, are insisting on wearing the dress in the snow, climbing the tree higher than feels comfortable to you, I encourage parents to use this line. Tell me your plan. What's your plan here? And the reason
Mm,
I say that is because children, their brain is not fully developed. And
mm.
so when we offer them these opportunities to fail, right? Like to fall out of the tree and break their arm, although I don't know that there's too many parents that are be like, yeah, let my kid fall out of the tree. But they
Yeah, we
definitely
don't
will.
want them to, but they have to, yeah, I didn't mean it to be like, oh yeah, go, who cares? But it's like if I say if you really shouldn't do that, well, sometimes they have to learn and they may not fall.
100%. And then but if they a less riskier risk is to wear the dress in the snow. But
Mhm.
offering that comment of tell me what your plan is. It gives children an opportunity to have some of that forward thinking that they don't naturally have because children live in the moment. So they're not thinking long term. They don't have enough experience to put their past into the future. They just live in the present, which is really beautiful and amazing. But when we get
Mm.
them that moment to kind of pause and go, hey, tell me more about what you're doing right now. And it gives them that thought and be like, oh, I just really want to wear this dress. I feel so pretty in it. And you're like, great. Can I also have you walk outside real quick just so you can feel how cold it is? And let me know if there's something else you'd like to bring with you to prepare for that. And it helps them to have that independence. And it also kind of helps to teach them, nope, I'm good. And you're like, okay, that's fine. That's fine, but just FYI, this is what it's going to look like. And they might still choose, no, I'm going to just wear this dress. And that's fine. When it comes to risky things like climbing a tree and you say, what's your plan? You get to negotiate with your child at that point and be like, okay, well, this branch feels fine for me. Please don't go any higher than this branch. Can you agree to that? And they oftentimes will be like, yeah, that's fine. Or they'll come back and be like, I'm feeling confident. I can go another one higher. And you get to decide at that point too. I think it's really important that we have these conversations with children around negotiation, right? And compromise because we want them to express their independence. We want them to take risk. We want them to take risk because that's how humanity evolves, right? If we didn't have risk
Right.
takers, we wouldn't have scientists, we wouldn't have inventions, we wouldn't have, businesses because that's all risk based. So we want
Mhm.
them to take risk within the capacity that feels safe and aligned to us. And so we get to have both and, right? So when we have those conversations around tell me more, we get a little bit of understanding into their world. And maybe they don't have an idea of what they're doing. And that's really cool because now you've just planted that seed of, well, okay, well, maybe we should have a plan about this. Let's think. And it'll pause them and stop. So they can go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to do this next.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, I love how as you said too, like kids live in the moment and they kind of don't care about anything, which is so nice. But at the same time, as a parent, it can get so frustrating.
For sure. For sure. I think sometimes
It's
it's really frustrating because we're a little bit jealous because we've lost that.
hmm, we're not as carefree and don't care what other people think.
Yeah. 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 When you're a child, you're pretty free to be who you are, and you don't have the influences of life that has forced you or shaped you into who you become as an adult due to experiences and things that you've internalized and learned to believe about yourself that just weren't true. When you're really
Mhm.
little, you don't have those limitations. You're very open.
Right. We need to become better parents. It's
Yeah.
I mean it's the challenge. And I think now, I mean my daughter is an adult now, and on many levels I'm thankful for that, because having a child now, or a young child now, with social media, the internet, I mean there's benefits to it. There's absolutely some great things that have come from it. But then there's also not so great things from it. And that, I think, um, for parents, is that brings things to a whole nother level of, and I know it's individual, of like, how much time do we give them on the computer or playing games or on social media? And of course, age factor comes into that. Um, and they've said like some kids that are great on computer games, they're now great being surgeons because of the technology that they're using, and so there are benefits, but we see bullying has gone to a whole different level, and self-worth. I mean, even as adults, we don't feel great about ourselves after being on social media. And so it's even, I think, worse for children, because I would like to think as adults we can process things better and think more reasonably, but not always. I mean, with kids, their brains are still forming, so definitely there's I think it's a lot harder for them now.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of influence and it can be hard because you're always on stage. When we were younger, we didn't have the social media, so we didn't have um that interruption throughout our day of constantly being reminded of being liked or disliked based on who we are and who we chose to be in front of the world. Um, I think the hardest thing for parents navigating technology right now is all of the scarcity mindset and just the fear that is there because they fear they fear their child is antisocial. They fear this huge disconnect with their child. They're like, I miss my child. They're present in my house, but the door's closed and they just go in there and I don't know what they're doing. They're fearful of
Mm,
all the information they're gaining without their consent, without the parents' consent, right? Because prior to social media, we were able to control the content that we exposed our children to. And now
right.
that's an open door, right? To anything and to some
Mm,
really adult things for young children to process can be really big. And so I usually talk to parents about, there is no right or wrong in social media. It's all based on your family values. Like if you guide your technology use around your family values, it goes a lot easier because you're no longer acting from a place of scared. You're acting from, or a place of fear. You're acting from a place of like, intentionality. And you're like, it is
mm,
our family value to have dinner every night and connect. And those connections are really fulfilling if you have dinner at the table. Maybe I'm just saying maybe that's your thing. And you're like, oh, my kids are in sports and we can't have family dinner. Great. Maybe Sunday dinner is your thing. You have dinner every
mhm.
Sunday night, or maybe it's lunch, or maybe it's a big brunch, whatever. whatever can work into your schedule so that you can get that time to connect. Because I promise that the more you're able to connect with your child, the less they'll seek outward approval, right? Because they're looking
Right.
for your approval, they're looking for your connection. But sometimes it can feel like they're not, right? And
Hmm.
the reason they feel like they're not, like they're distant, is because they don't feel seen by you. Not for who you want them to be or who you think they are. They don't feel seen for who they are in your eyes. And that is what really stops parents in their tracks. And they go,
Hmm.
oh, I thought I was seeing my child. I was like, no, no, you're seeing your child like they were when they were 5. You're seeing your child like you think you want them to be when they're 27, but you're not seeing who your child is right now at 13 because you're not slowing down to actually listen. You're on
Right.
fix it mode. You're on what you need, and you're not hearing them. But when you open conversations with children and you bring them in and say, hey, tell me more about this, all of a sudden you've got insider knowledge that you didn't have before that can guide you.
Mm.
Before you were making assumptions on how they were feeling, and you're judging their actions and their emotions based on your assumptions, which might not have been their
Right.
truth at all.
That's so true. It is. I remember when my daughter was younger. Um, I mean, I've worked from home before working from home was popular. Like I've been self-employed and worked from home for most of my working career. Um, was when she was younger and she would come home from school, especially around we were living in Costa Rica at the time. So starting at 13, even before that, even in Canada, but I specifically remember it more so there. But I was always, we have dinner at the dinner table and there's no phones, there's no TV. Like we sit and I said that. And one time she's and I would every time she comes home for school, I would always be, how was school today? And it would be the exact same. Boring. What did you learn? Nothing. Okay. And she would go to her room, whatever. And then at dinner time, she would sit down and one time she's like, "Why do you always ask me how my day was?" And I said, "Because I just want to know how your day was." And every time at dinner time, it would be quiet for the first just a couple of minutes. And I might ask something, or then she would start talking. Oh, today at school, this person did this, this happened that, or there was a big tarantula today in the classroom, and like blah blah blah, whatever. I remember I would think so many times, I'm like, interesting. Every day when she came home, how was school? Boring. What happened? Nothing. But then when we sat down for dinner, because it was going to be like, we'll sit here in silence. I don't need to talk. And then she would start to, oh, today at school, somebody did this, this person said that, it was so funny, whatever. And one time I said, why don't you say that when you come in? Like I ask you how your day was and what happened at school, and you give the same answer. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. And it was very, very routine of kind of how things went. And I would know and I would still do it, even though I knew she was going to say the same answers and then we would talk more. At dinner, I still, every time she came home, how are you? How was your day? What did you learn today? And I knew what I was going to get. And I was like, oh, okay, and just let it go. And then at dinner, she would tell me about her day.
I love that you just let it be. You let it be what it was because the reality is the way kids' brains are working, right? All day long, they're working from their prefrontal cortex at school. And because it's not fully developed till their late 20s, they are having to exercise that muscle all day long at school because it's full of their rational thinking. It's full of all the schoolwork that they're having to do all day.
Mhm.
And when they get into the car, they're just like, oh, and literally that prefrontal cortex goes offline. They are not receiving Wi-Fi. They are not in reception. They can't do rational thought at that point. They can't put together what I did today because they're so tired and they're actually acting from their amygdala, which is their primal brain, which is emotions. And so a lot of times kids will just get in the car and be like, "Ah!" terrible day. And parents are like, whoa, what happened? Or maybe they get in the car and they ask the same question, how was your day? And they're like, don't talk to me. And whoa, okay. I always tell parents, I'm like, just hand your kid a snack and smile and say, I love you. I hope you had a good day. That's it. And then you don't even have to, if you
Mm.
know your child's going to respond aggressively, you don't even have to say anything. Just hand them the snack. Because our primal brain is
Right.
in charge of emotions, but it's also in charge of food. I always think like, think of a caveman, grunts, groans, food. There you go.
Well, I remember when I was younger, uh, my mom should always be like, "Why are you kids so hungry when you come home from school? Like you had lunch 3 hours ago, or maybe four. Not, it definitely was not longer than four, but because we were done school, I think about 3:30 or so." And she'd be like, "You had lunch, 3 hours ago at noon." And then at one point, she decided to go back to school herself and was taking some courses and upgrading and stuff. And as soon as she got home, she'd be like, "I'm hungry." It's like because we've been using our brain, and when you're really thinking and concentrating and using it needs to be replenished with ideally nutritional food and water, which that was a big thing for me. And to this day, I still don't drink enough water, but I work on that. But it is. And if I've had really busy or really like focused, stressful days or learning another language, and I spent hours, I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. Okay, I need something to eat. Or I find like off to the side, you can't really see it here, but I've got a little dish that's got some seeds and nuts and things in it. So in between podcast interviews or whatever I'm doing in between meetings, I kind of pick at that and eat it because I'm just like, oh, I've just need something to just kind of help refuel myself, it feels like.
Absolutely. It's a muscle. If you were using your leg muscles, it would make sense that you were thirsty and hungry after you went for a long run. It's the same thing. You're using your brain muscle. It's a muscle, and you get to, especially when they're young, because they're really trying to keep that prefrontal cortex online all day. And that's a hard task for them because it's not fully developed. And they're tired at the end of the day. And it also makes sense as to why at dinner time she was able to access that. She had a time
Mm.
to relax and wind down. And then also you were feeding her. and
Yeah.
and food is community, food is love, food is gathering and opens itself for conversation and not only the preparation of it, but the consuming of it and then the
Mhm.
cleanup of it. Like all of that is very communal behavior that you get to engage in with your children. And the cool thing about it with is a lot of times you can have a conversation with someone, especially a teenager, and not make eye contact because when teenagers, well, when they become teenagers, um, eye contact can feel very threatening. But you can eat and not have to stare deeply into somebody's eyes. But if you're
Right.
sitting across the table from them, it can feel really intense. But when you have that food in between you and you're like, oh, and pass the salt, please, that is, it makes it a lot less vulnerable, a lot less threatening, and a little bit more safe for them to open up and have that conversation with you.
Yeah, and she did have that break time to relax from the time that she came in till we sat down and would have dinner. So and she would go up to her room, so she would either be I mean, the internet was around by then, so she would be on it a little bit, messaging with some friends, probably sometimes take a nap, 'cause I'd have to wake her up, whatever it may be. But yeah, her brain got that rest break period that it needed, and then we would have dinner. And as we said, I understand that that doesn't work for everybody because of lifestyle and
Mhm.
sporting and everything like that. But I do think it is important to do when we can do it.
100%. 100%. Now I think a lot of kids, they go into their bedroom and they get on devices and they aren't getting that rest period because the device itself is actually stimulating. And so it actually makes their
Mm,
brain more tired. So when they get off of it, then you'll hear the big emotions, right? It's that disconnect because they haven't had a chance to rest their body.
right. So in the perfect world, after school, it would be no devices for an hour-ish. And then, I mean, because I get it, and kids want devices and we want to connect with their friends and things like that, but to try to have that break or at that dinner time. I mean, we never really did like she would have breakfast, but we've never been big on breakfast. So for us, it worked for dinner.
Yeah. And I hate to say like, oh, you should have an hour break from tech. Like I try not to make hard and fast rules with parents because I want them to trust their own leadership and know
Of
what's right for their
course.
family.
Hmm.
But ideally the best thing for healthy, well-grounded, and emotionally stable children is time outside every day, time off of technology, and
Hmm.
meal times where technology is not present, where you guys are talking and engaging. Those are really important moments. And if you can't make those moments happen in your life, because I get it, some kids don't get picked up from school till 6 o'clock at night, and then they go right to gymnastics practice, and then they go right home to, or they go through drive-through and then they go to bed. But there are moments where you get to connect with your child, and maybe it's that bedtime routine. Maybe you read a book to your child, or maybe you just sit with them and say, hey, what would you like to talk to me about tonight? Give them that opportunity to talk. And if the evening isn't it, then maybe there's time in the morning. Hey, what would you like to talk to me about? It really only takes one really good connection with your child to sustain them for a couple of days. It's so powerful.
Wow.
And it's not
Mhm.
limited or transcended by time. Like the time makes no difference. If you just have like one question that really opens up and they feel connected and you feel connected, it can sustain them for 2 to 3 days. Is it ideal? No. Ideal would be to check in with them every day and get that time. But I also know that it's not always available. But once you're aware of how important that is, then maybe you can make the intentional time.
Mm. Make it a priority.
Yeah, your
I
kids are
I
learning
heard.
how to adult. They're learning how
Mhm.
to live. And if you're choosing a life by default, that you are um, led by all the external things happening in your life, rather than a life by design, they're learning that too.
Right. I heard somebody, and I can't remember who it was, say something, and it came across harsh, but it was so true that when something comes up, we have to prioritize things. Like that is life. We have to make everything a priority. It's either high on the list of priorities or it's low on the list because we just don't have time to do everything that we need, like, or want to do. So, of course. And he said, if you're not doing something, it's because it's not a priority. And he said, what I say to some parents, they're like, oh, I can't go to my kid's baseball game, or I don't have time to help my child with my homework. And he's like, oh, so your child's homework, helping your child is not a priority. And look, if you say that, it's like, oh, that's like it comes across harsh. But he said, but if your water tank stopped working or your furnace stopped working, you would reschedule or change that meeting to be at home at that time for the person to come fix it because that is a priority. And if we put those things into kind of that perspective, like when I think of things and then if I say, oh, it's not a priority, then I think, oh, do I need to make that a priority or am I okay with it not being? Because to say I'm too busy or I don't have time, all that really is saying is that's not a priority. Pardon the interruption. If you're liking the show so far, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really means a lot to me. It helps grow the show and the channel and how we can word things changes how we feel. Because if I can say it's, oh, you know what, I'm just too busy for that. It's easy to be like, I'm just too busy. It's okay. But if I say, that's not a priority for me, it's, oh, like that is more serious of a comment. And it's true, right? And we have to think, what are the priorities? Sure, great, our kids are in sports and things like that. Do they have to be in sports so they're in something every day? Or this season they do soccer, next season they do football, the next season they do ballet, or like whatever it may be. But we have to decide what is a priority. And when we think about it that way, I think we kind of change our perspective and realize, oh, maybe I need to change that, because to say I'm too busy is an easy excuse.
When I hear parents say, I can't, or I'm too busy, they're telling me they are a victim of their circumstances, when really
Mm,
their circumstances were all chosen by them. Every single thing that we have available to us is something that we have created. Whether we like it or not, we have
mhm,
created it ourselves. And so rather than saying, I can't help my child with their homework, I encourage parents to say, I won't. I won't help my child with my homework because now you are
ooh,
empowered. You know that
mhm,
you are the problem and the solution, right? You get
mhm,
to choose differently. It's not so much that I can't help my child with their homework. It's that I'm choosing not to. I won't help them
want
with their
to.
homework because back to your point, it's not my priority. Or maybe I'm avoiding something from my own childhood or something that I believe about myself. Maybe I won't help my child with their math homework because I believe I'm a bad math student. Hmm. But does that give you the right to walk away from it? Okay. Maybe it does.
Mhm,
If that's true, then maybe you could find somebody who could be better suited to help your child. Or maybe you could learn alongside your child. What a cool opportunity that would be.
mhm.
YouTube videos are everywhere.
Yeah,
You can learn math on YouTube.
absolutely. But then when helping with homework, as just as that example, that's again another bonding experience.
Yes,
And
your
it's
child
learning
will see.
together. Even if you're helping, it's still learning together. Because honestly, I don't know if I got like a seventh grade math exam now, I haven't done seventh grade math for a very, very long time. And there's
Yes,
probably some of it that I definitely would not get right. And that's
100%.
the reality for all parents.
And here's the thing. Maybe, some families feel strongly about not doing homework with their children, and that's fine too, if that's your family value. Totally fine. But I
Right.
encourage families like if your child's sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, why don't you sit down and do some of your work next to them? Sitting and working alongside of them, even though you're working on separate things, is still creating closeness.
Right.
Maybe you have a little like snack tray that you're sharing while you're working on maybe it's your job, maybe you're just paying bills, and maybe they're sitting right next to you working on their math or their English essay. I don't know, it could be anything.
Right.
Maybe they're just drawing a picture. All of it is really neat. It gets an opportunity for these connections. And I think sometimes parents think that connections have to be really big, like a trip to Disney
Mm,
World or a trip to, the latest trampoline park, or it's just not true. They get to be really simple, really natural, and just part of our everyday. They do actually fit in because in time is an illusion. It's an illusion that we make up because you could sit for 5 minutes and look up and be like, oh my gosh, I have to go. I'm late now, right? Because you could get so wrapped up
mm,
in your 5 minutes that it felt like an eternity, or 5 minutes could feel like a blink. Time is an
right.
illusion of how we're experiencing it. So when you get to choose your own time, you get to define it. You get to be intentional with it. And you are no longer subject to the busyness of life because you are now choosing intentionally what you're doing with the hours of your day.
Absolutely. And I think that is the perfect note to wrap up on. But before we do that, Kristen, you are a coach and you help parents. So if they wanted to get in touch with you, to talk with you more, where are the best places for them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like everybody, I'm over on Instagram at kristin.schmoke.parenting. I always say the hardest part is spelling my name. I have a website, which is, www.kristinschmoke.com. And yeah, I have an email that I send out every week to my community. If you'd like to get some more parenting tips, you're welcome to join that. And I have a freebie right now that's called Who's Taking Care of Mama, which is all about like who's taking care of the caretaker, right? How is
Right.
it that you are showing up for yourself every day? And there are free suggestions that you can take with you every single day. You don't have to buy them, you don't have to leave them in your other purse. You always have them with you.
Perfect. And I will make sure that those links are in the show notes to make it even easier for people to connect. So, again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a joy.